It's the great orange juice question. So just to, this is not a halacha l'maisa. This is just a understanding of the halachic issues. And most of them getting is taken from the sefer here, Dibarta Bam, which is written by a Talmud of David Feinstein.
What's it called?
Baruch Maskevitz. It's the Dibarta Bam. It's called. He's a Talmud of David Feinstein. He brings down a lot of his psakim. Very nice sefer. And again, there's a lot of discussion on it, and really, the orange juice question piggybacks on the water in New York's question,
Right.
Which first we need some background to the issues at hand before we can discuss the Shiloh. So apparently there's okay, there's these scale bugs that crawl around the peel of the oranges, and besides the bugs itself, there's the scale of the bug, which is really a secretion that comes out of the sherets that sort of becomes a protective cover, which gets into the. Now, how it gets into the orange juice, I'm not 100% clear. Apparently, you drink orange juice has orange peels in it, but they put some of it. They grind it in or whatever they do. But you have some of the orange peels that get in, and some of the bugs with the orange peels get in also. And they say in the Tropicana orange juice, each cup you for sure get at least one bug, and some possibly some of these scales also. And so the question is, halacha shaila is this mutter. Now, there's been a question in the New York water, which is also a serious question, which is we discussed in the past, whether you have bugs in the water. Now, there's bugs in every water. Anybody knows there's bugs in the water. Anybody who drinks water knows there's bugs. But apparently these bugs are quite visible before they put the chemicals in, which makes the bugs not so visible. Makes them a little more translucent. But if you know what you're looking for, you can actually find them, and they're quite large. So the question is, the kashras of all these things. So we're going to first back up, just a little short background into the sugya of bugs before we get into the tamim that are brought down on different things. To give us a little background there. So the question on the bugs is halacha shulchan aruch. Bugs is not a new problem in food. Bugs have always been around as long as the fruits have been around, as long as water have been around. And there's actually a halacha. Well, first of all, before we say the halacha of the bugs in the fruits and the bugs in the water, bugs in itself is a deraisa to eat. You're not allowed to eat bugs. Now, there's many different lavim. The Gemara says sometimes you have 2 lavim, 3 lavim, 4 lavim. The Gemara makas like a chomesh. So, because there's a lav of sheretz al haaretz and sheretz al hamayim, and then sheretz in the air, and some bugs have both. Some bugs are in the air and the ground. So you get all kinds of lavim when you eat bugs. Now, there's a question. Most of us don't go around eating bugs. It's not, Japanese eat shrimp, but bugs, is not as common. Well, there are people that do eat bugs, but it's not as common. But yeah, but nonetheless, there's actually 2 very interesting questions. The first question is like this: the first the Gemara discusses, which is that normally we know every shir achila is bekazayis. You have to eat a kazayis in order to be over any isur achila. Less than a kazayis goes into the question of chatzi shir. It's less than a shir, which is also aser, but that's a machlokes was aser, and the Gemara was aser deraisa aser midrabanan. Rabbi Yochanan holds chatzi shir is aser minatayra. But even if you have Yochanan, there are some references chatzi shir, but you can't get malchus on a half a shir. So when the Gemara says you get loika, the reason is because we have a concept called a beria, something which is a complete whole thing. Is a beria, and you get malchus on eating it, even though it's a minute amount. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, we know that there has to be some kind of hagdara to what's called a buggy over on, because we do know two things. First of all, we know that you breathe in the air, you're breathing in bugs. Everybody knows you breathe in bugs, and that's not us. So most places can go with the understanding that something which is not nicker la'ayin. The question is what's called not nicker la'ayin, but definitely if you need a microscope to see it, is not considered a bug. We don't consider it this world. It's not something which I have to consider with. When the Torah says you're allowed to drink water, and the Torah says you're allowed to breathe the air, and the Torah says you're allowed to eat the fruits, that's all included. Because these things are not something which you see, and therefore we're not concerned with them. But we are concerned with our bugs that you can't see. Okay.
What's nicker?
Nicker b'ayim that you can recognize with your eye. Now there is a shita that the Pasa Asada that says that even if you could see it with a magnifying glass, it's called nicker. But most places can go with that, and as long as you can't see it with your naked eye,
What's
the Priyasada, I'm sorry, the Shai's Priyasada that says if you could see it with a magnifying glass, that's enough to say it's nicker, because just go to the dollar store, buy a magnifying glass, and look on your orange peels, and you find bugs. So that would be called nicker, but most places don't seem to go with that, and if you can't see it without a magnifying glass, you can't see it with your own eye, that would not be considered nicker, and we don't have to be concerned with it. But we are concerned with
different levels.
Yeah, different levels
of magnifying glass.
That's true.
Magnifying glass.
And different people have different good eyesight. Some people are better than others.
Right.
Yeah, is there any comment about that? Because most people don't have perfect eyesight. So.
We're assuming you're talking about when you're wearing your glasses, obviously.
The way you normally see. The way you normally see, with you have to, after you corrected your vision, and you can see it. Now, even if you can see there's something there, you're not sure if it's a piece of dirt, or you're not sure if it's a bug, which happens many times, but that already you can verify with a magnifying glass. You can see it. But it starts crawling, you can definitely see it. So, if it's alive. So, that would be considered Nikolai. But according to most Paiskim, I'm not going to get into that Shaila. That's definitely a sugya by itself to try to understand what's included there. But let's just go with the basis that we're discussing bugs that are recognizable. You know, they manage to camouflage themselves very well. Roshon made it such a way that you can't see the bugs. You know, in the strawberries, they have little dots on them naturally, and the bugs hide in those dots, so it's very hard to see the bugs sometimes. Depends on what kind of bug it is.
Why would Hashem make us want to be natural? Why would...
Hashem made it that the bugs should be safe from the predators and other things that they can hide. So, Seder. So that's a little bit. But there is, the Torah does say, that there has to be a sheretz ha-sheretz al ha'aretz. So therefore, a bug that grows in a fruit that has not yet seen the light of day, that never came out of the fruit, that's inside the fruit, and it was nishaver, it sort of became into being betolush when the fruit was already detached from the tree, so it's not considered on the ground. And it's detached from the tree, and bugs grow from the ipush. Bugs grow from being spoiled. The bugs grow in the fruit itself. Those bugs are not considered sheretz al ha'aretz, and they're mutter to eat. They're kosher bugs until you get them out. Until they come out. There's a question of pirush chai, pirush meis. If it comes out after it's dead, it doesn't count. So if the fruit grew in the bug grew in the fruit, but it never came out, it was never sheretz al ha'aretz, that bug is not usher to eat. Okay? So, that a Gemara says has a shaila. What does that mean? It has to come out. Does it has to come out and go on the ground? Or is it enough that it comes out onto the peel of the fruit? The Gemara comes out of tekus. So therefore, bisafik, any bug that already came out onto the peel of the fruit, even if it originated within the fruit itself, is already considered usher. And even if it goes back in, you would not be able to eat it.
Yeah, so I'm cutting up a fruit. I'm cutting up an orange to eat. And I see a bug. So now is that sure it's all orange or not?
So you have to know where that bug originated from.
No, let's say it originated, we know it originated in the orange.
If you know it originated in the orange, it never came out. So then,
Yeah, but now that I cut it open, now it's seeing the light of day.
is that called pirish?
Yeah.
I don't think that's called pirish. It has to come out to the outside of the fruit.
Well, now the new outside of the fruit.
Yeah. I don't think it goes up to there.
Same with an apple.
Does it come out to the outside?
Sure, it's all orange. Even if you see him, he doesn't have to be on the.
No, so we say if it goes out to the outside of the fruit, then already is considered charetz ha'aretz. Now,
and if the fruit is connected to the tree, that's already.
it's already considered aretz. Now, it could be if it's in the seed and comes out of the seed, it's also considered coming out, even though it never came out of the fruit. So you have to know these halachas well to know what's considered coming out. And similar to, now this was a big sugya because the same halach is the bugs that are in the virus. Right, so it says like this. It says that are in the wells. Yeah, bugs that are in the wells. So the bugs that here. Shochim shabamayim is only those that came in the oceans and in the rivers and in the swamps. But the bugs that come grow in the water in the kalim or in the bayros are not asur. B'maris hamuchunasim gathered water mutarim calls mashalai pirshu if they never came out. So again, there is a heter here.
Is bugs translated like as we know them as insects?
Insects,
or
yeah.
is it any like a one-celled animal like an amoeba?
Well, maybe you can't see anyway, so we're not concerned with that.
Yeah, but the amoeba
You
will
can
make
see
very
it.
sick anyways.
Most people can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
The amoeba will make you very sick anyways, whether you can see it or not.
So there is a halacha, which is a machlokes rishonim, which waters qualify for this halacha, that if the bug grew within the water itself and never came out, it's a certain underground gathered water, boires, not rivers, not swamps. Charitzim and yitzim, the Rambam holds, since that flows a little bit, that's also not included. Different types. So it's a question of what kind of water is included. And again, this only refers to the bugs that grew within the water. Bugs that flew out and came back in, or came from the shores and came back in, or has gone out, or bugs that were perished from the water. The question is through the pipes and other things that managed to get onto, especially have different filtering systems. They get stuck in the filter and then they get through. These are questionable whether they're included in this heter. So I'm just giving a little background, though there are bugs that are mutter to eat. You have to verify that the bug you're eating fits into that category. So we're going to go with the assumption that
They come with a hechsher on.
the same thing is with the fish. The whole question with the bugs in the fish revolves around this question. The bugs that when it's hava within the fish, bugs that grew within the fish itself, are mutter if they never came out. It's only bugs that didn't originate from the fish, or they originated from the fish but got out, whatever is considered pirish, and came back in. That would be yasser.
Except for one problem. Those bugs in the fish actually have a very complicated life cycle. And
Right, they're swallowed by the krill, and then they don't.
They're a different form before they get into the fish, and then
Right.
they change to the form they're in.
Right,
That's all
right.
consolidated within the fish, not inside the fish.
Right. So that's the whole issue. So I'm not going to get into that now, but I'm just letting you know that there is such a clause, and possibly a svar lahater in certain cases where the bug may not be a bug that's awesome. But leaving that aside, because it seems that the consensus among the poskim is that the bugs in the water in New York and the bugs in the on the oranges for sure, because it's on the orange peel, those bugs do not have these heterim, and therefore if someone would take out the bug and eat it whole, he would be over on the isser of eating a sheretz. Either sheretz haaretz or sheretz hamayim or other forms of shvatzim.
But if you drank the tap water in New York?
So to drink tap water in New York, that's the question. Are you allowed to drink it? That's the question.
What if you cut it in half? So it's
Tap
not a
water.
berry anymore.
Well, we'll get to
And
everything.
even though it was out of the thing, but you don't have to share anymore and you don't have berries, so half should
So
be.
you won't get
one
malchus, but it'll be usher.
No, because
That's a
I-
share usher min ha-Torah, according to Rabbi Yochanan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just a little bit of background. So now the question is, we want to drink water, we want to drink orange juice. What's the deal? So let's talk about the orange juice. We'll go back to the water. It happens to be that, just to give a little background here, that Doug Feinstein, at least the way he brings down here, holds that the water is actually also in New York. You cannot drink the water. The bugs are whole there, and they're recognizable, and we'll get to the basis of it. But most places come down to the amater orange juice. And the question is only if you want to be machmer. Is there a reason to be machmer or not? Some say yes, some say not. But that's just as a disclaimer. I'm not, giving halacha shit to give the psak halacha here. You can ask a local rabbi. I'm just giving you the background of what all this is based on. It's actually very interesting.
We have orange juices with hechsher.
Orange juice hechsher, because most rabbanim are matir the orange juice at the end of the day. The question is,
Why?
why, and is the reason for that? If I want to be machber, should I be machber? Is there any reason to be machber?
Can't see them.
If
The
it's
water in
ground
New York,
up,
most people, most households have to say them. The Feinstein Aser of Abelski's Zatzal was matter the water, I believe. But the Feinstein and Yashin and others, were Aser. But most people have filters, and it's not so hard to filter it out. Most people have filters in their system in the house, which filters out the water and it takes care of the problem. And most people that are aware of the issue, again, it's not the whole New York. It's in parts of New York. You have to know where your water's coming from if there's an issue at all. That's what he brings down at the end here. But again, ask a local rabbi. That's not the purpose here.
So this psak halacha just centered around New York? Like
Yeah.
Does it apply to Baltimore or other?
I don't think so. It depends.
What-
It's a
what's
different kind of
special
water.
about- what's
They
special-
have a certain bug in there
The
that's
cool
quite.
pods. New York water.
They're
Yeah.
the center of the world. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it depends if what kind of reservoirs they have. Depends where the water's coming from.
Central Park.
So yeah. Okay, so getting back to here. So first we're going to discuss here, before we get to the bug itself, you have the secretion of the bug called the scale, which ends up in the water. Now the way he brings down here, he says the situation could have changed since he wrote this, but he brings down that some types of juices have it in every cup and sometimes have it in some of the cups, drive of the cups. And as far as the scales, it could be some don't have it in any of the cups, and some do have it. So depending on the type of orange juice you're getting, it depends on how much bugs you're getting. Okay.
Yes, very
But the
certain.
question with we'll see. So the question is, what is the issue of the scales? Before we talk about the bugs itself, what is the issue of the scales? So it seems that one could dan that it has to do with yoytzei min ha-tamei tamei. Now this is a very interesting halacha, which is quite relevant. The Gemara brings down in Chulin that something which comes out from an animal which is usher has the status of that animal that's usher. It's tamei. Okay, yoytzei min ha-tamei tamei. So if an animal gives out.
Right.
Pig milk, yeah, that would be a good example. Excellent. So you have milk coming out of a not kosher animal that has a din of something which comes out of a not kosher animal, which is considered not kosher, right?
He's asking about honey from a bee.
Yeah, so honey, the Torah is matter it, that's why it's mutter. The Gemara discusses it. The Gemara says, since the Torah says you could eat honey, so the Torah is matter honey. But otherwise, anachanami, you would have an issue.
But
The honey that goes in, you swallow it. Honey is not from the bee itself. It could be, the honey is not from the bee itself. It's other things, but there are certain secretions which the Torah is matter. So the nectar that gets.
But the enzyme puts out an enzyme, it's not its digestive system.
Right, so honey can do that. So milk the Torah is matter, even from Eva Melachai could be having this. From a live animal you're not allowed to eat. So something that's coming out from a live animal should be something that came out from something which is usher. So that should be usher. The Gemara says the bugs. Here we go. We just said bugs are mutter. But wait a second. There's another question with the bugs. The yotzim and tame. So if the animal you can't eat, so then the bugs coming out of the animal you can't eat, even though the bugs itself might be kosher because it never saw the light of day, but it has a din of the animal that it came from. So it might be Eva Menachai. If you have a bug coming out, so that's what Marachun discussed it. So there's a concept, something comes out of a davar tamei is tamei. So he brings down here there's two questions could discuss as far as the scale coming out into our orange juice. The first question we could discuss is this considered a yotzim at atameh? Because it brings around Moshe that holds that something which is not roy la'achila might not have the halacha of yotzim at atameh. So shtukal achidish, but it brings down that Moshe, I didn't look it up, and the other day I didn't have a chance to look it up. It brings a svar that it's not also yotzim latami, only something which is roy la'achila. If it's not roy la'achila, it's tam considered pirsha b'yalma, that it's mutu even if it comes out of a tummy. It brings Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach handles this also. So it's not roy la'achila, it's not b'chal the iser. He has questions on it. You find otherwise not like that, but that's one discussion. So it's possible that it wouldn't have this issue. So that would be a simple. Now the question is, how do you verify what's considered edible, not edible? Because at the end of the day, it's in the juice, which is quite edible in the juice. We eat a lot of things, a lot of the
additives.
Yeah, additives that go into different drinks and stuff that we have.
Why is it we said that? I'm not sure I caught that last remark you're making. Why is it that we say that for the orange juice that we don't have a problem? I didn't quite catch that.
No, so there's two issues we were talking about. There's bugs on the peels of orange juice that ends up in the orange juice, and there's the scale, which is the secretion from the bug, which makes a protective layer that gets into the juice also.
Right. So why is that not usher?
So the question is that something which is very la'achila? Is that something which is an edible food? If you just get a whole pile of those and try to eat it, is that just edible? Or is it rubber? Or something which is not edible? So if Moshe wants to say something that's not edible doesn't have the halacha of yotzim and atameh, that's tameh. So there's a lot of foods like that. There are a lot of things that they put in. You'll be surprised what goes into the Coca-Cola and who knows what. They used to say that the black pigment of the Indian used to go into Coca-Cola. I don't know exactly. They used to have, then there's there's some beetle excretions that there's all kinds of things they put in. Now we have to, which could be a din of yotzim and atameh, but again, the health department, I guess, didn't get there yet. But as far as the kashrus goes, so if it's something which is not edible, that wouldn't have the halacha of yotzim and atameh, this would be a very big heter. You're allowed to put, for example, I'm not talking about if it's healthy, but you could take plastic and melt it and put it into food and eat it. It's not kosher. It's just nothing. It's not kosher, it's not kosher, it's not a food.
I was told you don't need a hechsher on orange juice if it has USDA, because they'd be afraid to put anything else in. So if it's pure, if it says pure, you don't need a hechsher.
Could be it's true.
That's what I was
Could be it's
told.
true if it's pure, but that was before the bug question came.
Yeah, I know.
That was pre-bug question.
I'm talking about the
Yeah.
hechsher itself.
Yeah. So that's question number one. So there is a big svara to say that the stuff that is coming out, the secretion at least, would not be considered an oichel and therefore is not actually not kosher. Okay, that's svara number one.
It's not
Right.
It's not kosher.
It's not kosher. Right. Question is if it's kosher, but it's not kosher.
So McDonald's burger could be kosher if it's.
So when you say roy la'achila, you mean you take a spoonful of the stuff,
Itself, right.
can you eat it? Or, I mean,
So that's the
I suppose
question.
anything I suppose you
Right.
could put in your mouth.
And eat.
It's not fit to eat.
Yeah.
Because even when you
Certain
put it in
things
your
are
mouth-
not roy la'achila because they're hard. Certain things are not roy la'achila because they're bitter. You have to know in halacha. He discusses this. What's not called roy la'achila? It's a hard thing to really define. What's called not real achila.
Yeah, but on Pesach.
Is that the heter for the covering they put on apples? It's from an insect, Caranuba, I think it's called.
Possible.
The wax.
It's possible. The
The
wax.
wax,
Yeah. Some people wash it off for that reason. Yeah. Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
So, I mean, is that something one should wash off?
I don't know if they taka use that now. I don't know. You have to go to have to verify it. Yeah. Okay. So. Okay, so that's one svara. There's another svara that, again, you don't. The question is, you have a taruvus over here. You have a mixture between the not kosher secretion and the orange juice. So the question is, how much in that mixture has to be there in order that it should be considered asr? So there is a rule, at least for the raisa, that's called the kazayis b'chtei achilus pras. So in any case, you don't have a kazayis, you don't have a big share in there. It's a small amount. So it's a chatzi share b'taruvus. There are many sheets old chatzi share b'taruvus. A half a share that's in a taruvus is actually not asr.
Oh, but we're talking now about the scales.
The scales, yeah.
Not the
bug itself. The bug itself is...
There's no
is-
bittul.
There's no bittul. That we're going to get to, yeah. We're going from the easy one to the hard one. So the scales itself, there's another svara that Chatzi Shir B'Taruvus is called. The Minchas Koyin brings down as Mate B'Mokam Suffolk. And the Prima Gonim is Machmir. So if you don't have a Kazayas B'Chol HaTaruvus, which is Midrabanan, so there's a svara to say it can be mutter if you have a suffix. Now we have a good suffix here. We don't know. Perhaps there are shitas that hold that it's considered. We have a lot of sveikas here. We have one suffix. Perhaps it's not in the cup. Now there's another question. You know it's maybe in the whole bottle of orange juice. You don't know for sure, but there's a good chance. But in your cup, there's a suffix if there's the secretion in there. It seems that's not 100% clear, but again you have to verify the Metzias. And two, it might not be in the cup. And two, there's a svara that it's chatzi shir b'taruvos, so it's a suffix if it's there. It's a suffix. It's a issur d'rabbanan only chatzi shir b'taruvos, and it's a suffix. And then the suffix is there. And then there's a suffix maybe it's not even usher. So maybe you even have a sveika. Maybe it's not even usher like a moshe. But the complication comes here. It's because you could, if you know what you're doing, get it out. You could get it out, or you could perhaps even without getting it out, if you know what you're doing, you could actually find it in there. You could actually find it in there. So something which is efshel haker is not bottle. Something which I could find, perhaps is not bottle. There's two svaras.
You can actually see it in the orange juice?
So the orange juice is taka hard to see because it's orange, so you can't see it. But
are there practical considerations there? Like, yeah, maybe you can take it out, but it would make it impossible to make orange juice. It would be so expensive or so complicated.
I don't know how expensive it is. I don't know. I know that maybe it'll be expensive. Yeah, I know in the Lakewood they have a brisket mach where they give you filtered orange juice. They thought of everything today.
We got gefilte fish and gefilte
Filtered orange juice. Yeah. So the question is, but there is a question, something which is this is really the question. If it's efshel asanin, if you could get it out. So there's a halacha the Isra brings down. It's brought out in Shulchan Aruch that if you have a chalaf falls into a soup, and you could get it out. So it says if you're makiroi, since you could get it out, you can harden it and get it out. So that's called kilu makira. It's as if you recognize it. And it's not bottle. Bottle is you can't recognize it. But if this you could facilitate that it should that you can get it out. So then it's called tzorach lasira. You have to remove it. Now there's a question. What the reason is? If the reason is because it's called nicker, and if it's nicker, it's not bottle. Or, there's another svar, it's called davar sheyesh matirin. You know, anything which could become mutter is not bottle. And I can make my soup mutter by getting this out. I could eat it in the way of a heter without eating in the way of isser, so perhaps it's also. So something which I could remove could be also for two reasons. A, it possibly could be also because I could find it. B, it could be also perhaps because anything which I can make mutter, I have to eat it when it's mutter, not when it's usr.
Except for the problem though is, if it costs you money to make it mutter, it's not called avsheish matira.
Yeah. So it could be avsheish matira would be easier to get rid of if it's very difficult to do. The nafkamina would be, which just to keep it simple over here, would be, let's say I could filter it out, but even after I filter it out, I can't exactly see the yisr. In other words, I put my orange juice through a filter, and the filter is full of orange peels, pieces, who knows what's in there. And I can't really find the bug in there. I know if I put it on the microscope, the bug's there. And I know it's out of my orange juice now. But I don't know where it is. So the question is that called I can be makar the isser? There's a big svara to say that's not called I can be makar the isser. Because even after I filter it out, I still can't be makar the isser. My orange juice is hereby bugless. But my filter has bugs in it, but I don't see it. So in other words, if the svara is that it's efshel hakira, that I can recognize it, that's a svara if it's taka efshel hakira, if I taka can recognize it. But if at the end of the day, even after I do the whole shebang, I can't recognize it, so that svara perhaps would be out. Now there's a big nafkamina, because that's a dairaisa. Efshel hakira could be, according to some poskim, a dairaisa. The dairaisa, it's not bottle if I could see it. But the svara of Yeshem Matirin is only the Rabbanon dik svara that's not bottle. So here would be considered maybe a Dover Yeshem Matirin, because I could put my orange juice through the filter. I could drink it in a mutter dik way, but I cannot bring makar the isser.
You can get orange juice either with pulp or low pulp or no pulp.
Right.
If you're getting no pulp, it's supposedly been heavily filtered because it
still has it. Yeah. I
it
don't
would
know
still
the
happen.
but it still has bugs on there. Yeah.
Really?
In your example of if a bug fell into the soup, because it's a hot liquid, it lets you took that bug out. Is that soup still edible?
Is the bugs in there?
No, a bug falls in.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll go now on the secretion that comes out, the scales. We'll get to the bug itself. Okay, so at the end of the day, the real question is, am I mechuyev to go and filter out these scales or not? So, he's marach very, very long on this question. Shitas, Rishonim, Achronim on this, but this is a question. So it brings down at the end here that it could be it's not considered dove that you can recognize taka when you filter it out, especially in the oranges. It's not considered something that you can recognize. It's only a question of dove sheshem ativin at best. So that's already one d'Rabbanan. And if it's not easy to do it, it's hard to, which it is, it's not so easy to filter. You have to have the right things. So it's not something that was considered yachal hakar b'kal. It's not easy to do. So it could be there's no chiyuv to filter it at all, because again, there's a question of chasi shir b'taruvas. There's a question of perhaps it's not even osir, and perhaps it's not even there. So based on all this, he holds that there's no chiyuv to filter it, and you can rely on, as far as the scales in the orange juice, you can rely on this, and you don't have to do it. And he holds you're not even chiyuv to be machbar on it. Now. That's the easy part. The question is, what do you do with the bugs itself?
Does the butcher have to look for bugs when they cut up the meat?
Right?
Do the butchers have to look for the animal inside the animal?
No. There's no bugs.
No?
Oh. Okay, so now we're getting to the question of beria. Now, beria, we said if you eat the whole bug, if there's a whole bug, then a whole bug is asr. You get malchus feed it. But there's another chiddush of beria. The other chiddush of beria is that it's not bottle. So even though we said other foods are bottle, beria the mechaber paskins afilu be'elaflei bottle. Even if you have 1,000 times against it, it's not bottle. So if you have a whole buggy swimming around in there, you got a real problem. Because there, it's not bottle and it's mavur in the halacha, even if you can't get it out. Even if you can't filter it out, that doesn't help. It's still not bottle. That's mavur in halacha. So the question is, now what do you do? So now if it's not whole, the poskim handle, if one of the legs fall off, or little pieces fall off from the process, then we're soymach on the shittas that that's not considered a barrier, and then it would be bottle. But the testing has shown that the whole bug's there, not missing any legs or anything, and therefore the question is, what do you do? There are whole bugs in there. What's the heter? It's a barrier. Now, just to back up, this question of barrier again. This question of barrier could be a deraisa, could be a derabanan. If it's just barriers deraisa, it's really bottle. This din of barrier is not bottle, is only a derabanan. The rice is bottled, but that's only if I can't filter it out. If I could filter it out, perhaps now we have a question of a deraisa. Now we have a question of deraisa. He brings an interesting chakira based on this Chuvas Priyasoda. Brings interesting chakira. We know. Here. We know that something which is bottled turns to heter. So in other words, if I have some not kosher liquid goes into my soup and it's mixed in, not only is it's bottled, so I could drink it, I could eat the soup, but not only is it bottled, the not kosher becomes mutter, becomes heter. Ha-isu nepach leheter. The isu turns into heter. So the Priyasoda wants to say, well, that's only true if it's not a barrier. But if it's a barrier, the barrier doesn't turn into a heter. The barrier can't turn into a heter. It's still isser. There may be halacha that I go basarayv and I can eat based on the rayv, but the thing itself does not turn into heter. So, therefore, if it's possible, you see, there's another question here. Let's say I can't get it out, but I can recognize it. There are certain cases which are recognizable where it is, even though I can't filter it out. You can either recognize it sometimes by seeing it, sometimes by a mamoshes. You can recognize this there if you feel it. And there are certain things which are recognizable, even though it's impossible to properly get it out. But that could be called nicker, and it wouldn't be bottle either. So, Maisa, Allah, Maisa, Pashas we go that it is nepach, and it turns to heter, and it's just a question of drabanan over here, that if the berry is not bottled, which would be a drabanan. But here there's a much more stricter criteria of being able to sift it out. In other words, if we're talking about davar sheyesh matirin, which is only a drabanan, I could sift it out, and it's mutter, so perhaps I have to do it. So if it's hard to do, and even after you do it, it's not so recognizable, and you need a mumcha for it, or you need a proper kalim for it, so perhaps you don't have to go ahead and do it. But if we're talking about a barrier which is like bottle, perhaps there's a higher standard of what's called that I can get it out. So what's the heter to drink these things? So for this reason, actually, that's why Feinstein holds that the water is a problem, because the bugs there are recognizable. They are recognizable. They could easily be filtered out. Not so hard to filter it out. You just take you buy a filter in the store, you put it in the sink, and you put it in the faucet, or you could install it if you want to get a guy to do for your house. It's not so hard to do. It's easier to do, and it's recognizable in the water, and therefore you don't need such a mumcha for it. You may have to learn to find out what to look for, but it's not so hard, and therefore he holds it's a problem. But as far as the orange juice, he says like this. So we'll start. There's a very interesting Aruch HaShulchan. This is not a new shaila, like we said. This is an old shaila. This is an old shaila, and the poskim deal barichas with different ideas of a heter for this question. The first one is the crazy or placey of the Anderson Eibschutz back then, and he says that, wait a second, who said this is so true that a barrier is not bottled?
What's the barrier?
Something which is a whole animal, a whole bug is not bottled. A whole bug, something which is whole, is not bottled. So I'm just going to place this. Kuf. He brings that over here like this. going crazy placey. He says that really you could rely on the Shitas Rabbeinu Shimshon and the Rashba that a barrier is bottle, a whole animal is bottle if you have 960 times as much connected it. In other words, it's not true that per elef loy bottle. Drop elef is already bottle. So drop under elef is not bottle. It's based on the sugi there, the Mishnah. But they learn that there is a shear where even a whole animal can become bottle. And since he brings down the Baal Halachas Gedolos, the Bahag, Shekol Dvar Divrei Kabbalah, he was one of the Goinim, as Divrei Kabbalah had like that. The Rosh brings it down, and then
1 in 9.
it's a Rishalmi, based on the Rishalmi. The Orzarua holds like that, which is one of the basis of all the psak of the Ashkenazim, is from the Orzarua. He held like that.
Does that work on animals? If you have 1 against 960, then you can eat a trait animal? Bottle?
It's bottle.
So you can eat it.
So you can eat it. Now, it says the Rif holds like that. He comes out, Lafiza Rabu Adeyas Lahater, Balachix Gdolis, the Rif, the Ravid, Rabbi the Shimshon Baal Toises, the Rashba, the Zerua, and possibly Rashi holds like that. And this that the Rosh doesn't hold that. Okay, so B'Shas Atchak, he could definitely be Soymach. He could be Soymach on a Yochid, Mokum Ram B'Shas Atchak. So he wants to say, no problem, it's bottle. It's bottle, finished. So it is bottle. Now, very nice that the crazy comes along and says, "Roiv Rishonim hold that it's mutter, and big Rishonim we can be soymach on it." The Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring this down, and the Ramah doesn't bring this down. Both the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah both are clear that a berry is not bottle, even be'elef. So how could we rely on these opinions against the das of the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah? So he brings down the Aruch HaShulchan here. The Mishkanas Yaakov has another tzad heter, very interesting tzad heter. He says like this. He says that the reason why something which is whole, a whole animal, is not bottle because it has chashivas. It's a dov chashiv is not bottle. That's how he wants to learn. Now, he says that's dafka if the piece could be oimid beinev and ikeres. You just don't know which one is the asa one. If you have 10 pieces in front, 100 pieces in front of us, and we don't know which is the isser and which is the heter, so since each piece is considered a dava chashiv, so it's not bottle. I don't know how you have that with bugs, but in any case, if you have something which is a barrier, which is a whole thing, so even though you have other things there, and you're not sure which is the isser, the heter, so it's not considered bottle. But something which is ma'otzim katnusim nevin mamoshan, says Lashon. Something which goes into the liquid, and because it's so small, you don't see the mamoshas of it at all. The nidbak bepas, it gets stuck into the bread, or it gets mixed into a soup, and it's not possible to separate it at all. So then he says, so it's never by itself, it's always with taruvas. That doesn't have a halach of a barrier.
So the 1 in 100 case, when you said you have 100 pieces, but you can't tell which
So let's say a gid anosha, for example. A gid anosha has a din of a barrier, for whatever reason it is. So you have a piece of meat, which is a gid anosha. You have other pieces of meat, and you don't know which one is the yes or the heter. So there, each piece is standing by itself, so it's not bottom. But here, where it's turned into a liquid, and you can't really recognize it. Now, the only question is, from his lashon, it's mashma that you can't get it out. But if Takai could get it out, perhaps it wouldn't be included in this heter. So it's a little bit of a stretch to use this heter in this case. But Lamaisa, it's a stark svara that Mashkanas Yaakov is saying that the chashivas of the barrier does not exist if it's in a situation where it's not, it's never going to come out by itself. You're not going to eat it by itself. It's all part of the soup, and the Aruch HaShulchan doesn't like this. He says, well, if you pull it out and you eat it, you get malchus. So if it's in there, it's bottle. So others say that doesn't matter. If I pull it out, eat by itself, it's not in the mixture anymore. But now what's in the mixture, so perhaps it's bottle.
But the 1 in 100 case,
yeah.
If you have a marketplace and everyone except for one butcher's kosher, and you find a piece of meat, don't we hold that that piece of meat you could eat?
No, it depends if I find it in the butcher shop or find it on the street.
Yeah.
Right, so
That's
if you
called the
got it
Porish Melula Parish. But if I have in front of me all 100 pieces, I can't eat it. It's a taruvis.
But if you don't know which is the piece.
That's
though,
different.
it
That's
doesn't
called a parish.
matter. Right.
If I have 10 stores and I find one piece of meat, I don't know which one it came from, then you go bust a life. But if I have 100 pieces in front of me, and one is this and the rest are mutter, and it's a barrier, I can't eat any of the pieces.
On the other hand, if the cat walks off with one piece of meat, then all the others become mutter, because you say that was the one that was...
If one fell out, right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, you're saying pour out a little of the orange juice in the cup.
I don't know if you do that, I don't know if you do that, but then...
Oh, so the Aruch HaShulchan has another heter, he wants to say. Why this issue should not apply. There's another heter. He says, now this is a Chiddush heter, he says, because he says that we know something, things which are disgusting, like the molim, zvuvim, yitoshim, everybody stays away from them. If it's nimcha, we're not talking about a whole animal, but if it dissolves in the soup, if your bug falls into the soup and it dissolves, it's not whole, so it's mutter. Because these things we don't consider are nice and tam, they don't give taste to the soup, they're disgusting, and therefore this is the heter. If you don't have a whole animal, it's bottled in the soup because it's doesn't. We don't care for that taste. It's just nemusim.
If it doesn't
But-
dissolve, if it doesn't dissolve.
As long as it's not whole.
No, but if it doesn't dissolve, let's say,
That we're going to discuss in a minute. So he wants to say there's a chiddush because the Gemara says that tam is not usher because the whole animal is dvar meusim is considered. It's a chiddush that the Torah made it usher to eat. Really, something which is like we said before is not edible is not kosher.
Right.
So what's with these bugs? They're not edible. So it's meusim, it's disgusting. So, but it doesn't matter because the Torah said it's awesome. So it's a chiddush that the Torah said it's awesome. But the chiddush is only as far as the bug goes for itself. But anything comes out of that bug, even the taste that comes out, as always more than avodah zarah, that taste is not considered awesome and it's mutter. So he wants to take it a step further and says, when Chazal made a gzeira that a berry is not bottled, that a whole animal is not bottled, they didn't make this on a dvar meusim. So he says, because it's a chiddush that you're chayiv for eating it by itself. It's a whole chiddush you're chayiv to eat it by itself because the Torah asked it. But if it's not by itself, it's mixed with the other foods, and it says then it's as if it's regular food that got disgusting, which is bottled.
So that would apply for the orange juice case.
Chayra. Now that's what he wants to say. So this will all be svaras that it's bottled. You see, once you can rely that it's bottled, min hatayra, but what is bottled even Rabban is bottled. So now the whole question is efshel asanein. So then again we get into the old question where you pull it out. That's not so clear. Even after you do the filtering, where the isser is in the filter, it's hard to find, and it's hard to filter. It's not so easy. So there's some svaras to be matteret.
Can you rely on the concept of bittul if you know that the issa is there? Like bittul is normally something.
I know it's here, but I don't know where it is. Yeah.
So you get broccoli. You know that there are bugs there, but you're going to put it through a processor. So you know there are bugs there, and they're all going to be crushed up.
Right. If they're crushed up, it's different. Then it's bottled.
Then it's bottled.
It's bottled, but
even though you know it's there in the first place.
Even though you know there, it's bottled. Yeah.
You can make broccoli soup.
But you don't know for sure it's there. You think it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. No, because,
That's true.
So there's another svara in the Chazon Ish that you have to know the size of these bugs. There's another svara that even though you could see this bug by itself, so it would be considered niralei nayim, that's not bottle. But the Chazon Ish says ve'efsher something she'ein ha'ayin shoylet by lav beriyim. So in other words, it's so small that even though if I see it on this white tablecloth, I'll see it and I'll recognize it, and it's considered usher. If I would eat it, I would actually get malchus for eating it. But as far as when it's mixed into a taruvis, it's something which the eye doesn't at first catch it. That doesn't have the chashivas of a barrier of a whole animal, and perhaps could be bottled. So there's another svara to say that it should be batal. So now, halacha l'maisa, what comes out from all this? So halacha l'maisa comes out from this. There are svaras over here to say that these bugs could possibly be batal. They're all maybe difficult svaras and not some that are straight clearly, but there are svaras say batal. So if there's a suffix, if it's in the cup, it's much better. It's a suffix barrier. The Taz says a suffix if you have a barrier, if a suffix if it's whole, that's mutter. Suffix barrier is batal. Only a vadi barrier is not batal. So if it's a suffix, then it could be batal. But if the case is that perhaps it's not a suffix, it's perhaps a vadai, then it's a little harder. It's a little harder to be matir, but nonetheless, you have all these svaras of these achronim that so he brings from the finds it's no vadi barrier. I think there's a question about whether there's which orange juice and which one has for sure bugs in the cup. But if it's a suffix, then there's a big svara to be materit based on all these things. And it could be even without a suffix. There's this big svara to be materit b'shas adchak. So what?
If a person makes an effort to find something, they have a cup of orange juice and they make an effort, does that change the halachic status of the situation?
Well, you probably won't find it because you don't know how to look for it.
So in other words,
but if you filter it out, it's hard.
That's the only thing.
Yeah,
it's not,
like a lot of places. Another wanted to say that there's this question with the bugs in the fish. So in certain fish, it's easier to find taka. In certain fish, it's very hard. Salmon, for example, is hard to find because it's so pink. But in the white fish, it might be easier to find the bugs. So it could be something which is taka hard to find. Has this halacha that it's considered difficult to pull out. It's very difficult, and you have these svaras that you could rely on. So in the end of the day, that the ikar adin, the poskim are saying that it's permitted. And there's a bachloikis whether there's a halal, whether Baal Nefesh should be machmer or not. That's questionable. He says la'alocha ein tzarich lahachmer if it's a suffix. If it's a suffix, if it's there. So I think it depends what juice you're buying, whether there's really a suffix there. But if it's a suffix, whether it's there, then and it's taka difficult to. It's not like water, which is easier to filter. This is more difficult to filter. Yeah, and therefore. He is matir over here. But in any case, that's the basis of the halacha. I heard from Rabbi Miller, he said that whenever these shilos come up, you can't aser it. The whole Klal Yisrael is eating it for hundreds of years. You can't come out and just say it's aser. You really have to look in and prove that it's aser. The question is, do you have to prove that it's mutter? You have a suffix, you have to prove that it's aser. There is an interesting svara that some achronim want to say, that we know davar sheina meschavin, right? So it's maybe lo yafshur, it's efshur v'lo kamachavin. In other words, you're drinking the juice, you have no intention of drinking bugs, you're interested in drinking juice. So you're not machavin for it. So is that a svara to say that it's mutter, based on the sugya and psachim? Is that a svara? There's some places that want to say it's a svara to say it's mutter. I'm not machavin to eat the isra at all. Now we know the Gemara says, chalavim, Varayas, chalavim, it's even if you're not machavin to eat it, but if you eat it, you're over shchenena. Well, that's a piece of chaylev. I'm nena if I swallow it. Here, I'm not nena from having that bug in the arm shoes. I'm only drinking the arm shoes. So they say it's a svar to say that it should be mutter, regardless, even if it's awesome and it's not bottle and has all the halachas, but I'm not machavin for it. Zalman and Mincha doesn't like this svar. He says anything that's part of the food, that's in the food, we don't say that it's loika machavin and has it in a visser. But there's a lot of poskim that work very hard to try to figure out that studim hayeter befrat. He says 200 or 300 years ago, or maybe more, when they didn't know anything about the bugs, that definitely had a din of loika machavin. It was like, al daitum klal, that there was a bug in the orange shoes. Why should they think there's bugs in the orange shoes? Or anything else? So that's poshut, that's called karv la'oinus. It's not even considered an isser, you're not machavim for it at all. But today, where you know it's there, We know we have a Yediyah Berura that's in there. The question is, do I have to take it out? That's a whole different shayla. You can't say he's not Mechavin because you know what's in the cup and you're drinking it. So you are Mechavin to drink it. Whether you want to drink it or not, different story. But you're Mechavin to drink it, and that's a difficult svara to rely on. But nonetheless, we have this Aruch HaShulchan, which was matter based on these svaras, and in a case where there's a suffix, barrier, where there's a suffix, then there's bigger svaras to be matter, even though it's taka possible to get it out, but it's not so simple.
You mentioned one of the svaras that if it's not, if you can't see it by eye, if it doesn't jump up at you, like most of the vegetables, I mean, you don't see any bugs. I mean, you'd have to, I don't know.
I said maybe it doesn't have a barrier, but you could see them. If you take the bug, you could actually see it.
If you what?
Most of the vegetables, you take the bug, you could actually see it.
Really?
Yeah. You don't know what you're looking for. You know what you're looking for. It's there. It's very clearly there. I was talking about the Chazon saying that if it's in the taruvas and it's mixed, and it's something which is not, the eye doesn't catch right away, it could be doesn't have a din of a barrier. That's what we're discussing. But as far as the bug by itself, most of the bugs are quite clear. It's something what you're looking for, but they're there, very clear, and you can see them crawling around very nicely. Shemaka, and nice day.
Really?
Yeah.
So if a wasp lands in your soup and dies there, and you now scoop it out, what happens to the rest of your soup?
It's 100% mutter, because we're saying the taste that comes out of Dvar Mu'usim, the taste that comes out of things that are disgusting, don't have a din isra on them. It's only things that taste good. But something that's Mu'usim, it's a chiddush hakor that it's also, but the taste that comes out is mutter, so there's no shayla on it. The Gemara says an achbar, a rat, that got into the vat or the beer and everything like that, you could take it out, and even though it's already disintegrated in, it's mutter, because that's not considered us.
So anything that you process, like if you take frozen fruit.
Yeah, anything which you chop up and grind up and it becomes not a barrier is bottle. The question is, am I allowed to be mevatel isel lechatchila? So if I don't know for sure it's there, I could. In other words, strawberries have these bugs on it. If I crush it up, so I don't, since it's not a vadai, so it's not, cookies don't listen to mevatel lechatchila. So when I crush it up, it becomes bottle 100%, and then it's 100% kosher.